afternoon, depending to where you are. We're going to start the call with a prayer. I want from Bible to hear us.
Yes. Ngatina mati tenzi mwari baba tokutendai chipo chemuchero chamunotipa zuva nezuva, tokutendai nezuva iro rinonzwa nhasi matichengetedza kusvika pane dzino nguva tiri vapenyu. Tanamata nchisa musangano uno dai mungatikomborera zvese zvatinoronga zviguva zvinonatswa neiyo mbiri yenyu nokugara nokusingaperi. Amen.
Yes, thank you very much, God. We are going to start with today. Okay, Chimundu, can you hear us? Yes, can you hear me? Yes, up next we have Derry Anthony. Derry Anthony, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yes, Derry Anthony.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Yes,
please can you hear me?
Derry Anthony.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give reports about activities that went on in the Ghana group within the week. To begin, members who attended last week's Zoom meeting were thanked and asked to confirm the attendance for today's meeting as usual. Those who were not able to attend the last week's Zoom meeting were encouraged to do their best to attend today's one. Also, a leader board made up of members who managed to participate in the tasks assigned to us within the week were kept in the group. In addition, newsletter for the week was kept on the group and members were encouraged to write their newsletter so that it will be added. Again, the various social media platforms for the family were kept on the page for members to subscribe, follow, like our posts, and also share with families and friends. Furthermore, we were reminded to identify and recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. The format for the business recommendation was added for us to follow. Last but not least, we were reminded of the rules and regulations guiding us in the group. Those who flouted the group rules face disciplinary actions. COVID-19 updates in Ghana. Since the emergence of COVID-19, Ghana has recorded a total of 120,452 cases. Then, out of this, the active cases 940 are 112,460, and the deaths recorded so far since the emergence of COVID-19 are 1,052. Derry Anthony, reporting from Ghana. I am because we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derry Anthony. Up next, we have Zoe Owusu. Zoe Owusu, can you hear us? I think we are going to have our speaker today. Then we can continue with the reports after. Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us? Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us? You are on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us? I think he's having, okay. Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. All right. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, can you all see me, hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I won't have much time with you today, but nevertheless, let's do the best that we can. I'm going to cover just one or two items. First of all, I want to welcome everybody, from wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's always a pleasure to meet with you every Saturday. It's also quite a challenge to me to try and think what would be the most relevant subject to cover. But for the most part, I try to maybe reflect on my own growing up, in my own experiences, the things that I feel I ought to have known, or if somebody else told me so, maybe I could have, taken a different path in my life. On the Pan-African news, my main comment today is what I saw the president of Zambia doing, that he conferred the position of Deputy Commissioner for Prison Services to his former jailer. When he was in prison, this particular prison officer acted quite professionally and respectfully, that he understood the human rights of a prisoner. Then the president of Zambia, when he came out and when he became the president, he took note of what he had experienced. So he elevated this gentleman who was his prison warden to be the deputy commissioner for prison services, which I thought is a very commendable thing. It has got two dimensions to it, that no matter what professions we have and responsibilities that we have in government, when you are a civil servant, you work for the government in power in terms of following its policies, but also at the same time, you must be in a position where you don't just follow any policy, regardless of whether it is the right thing to do or not. It's just like being told to go and fight a war that you think is unjust. So you do, refuse to take those kinds of orders because your conscience will not allow you to do so. And I think that is the same thing that this prison warden did when he was in charge of the prison where the current president of Zambia is in. So that's my tidbit on the Pan-African news today, and I wish that all of our civil servants would act professionally and provide their services to the country and not just follow what the political leaders tell them to do, even if it is against their conscience and even if they believe what they are being told to do is wrong. Okay, the next item, last time I was talking about gold, its role, its importance. Again, the major take there is that I feel Africa has got a whole new set of occupation taking place. We had the one that took place in 1884, which was the partitioning of Africa, and the European countries came and just sold out parts of Africa to themselves, regardless of who was living in that, who owned those parts of Africa and so forth. But today we've got a different form of partitioning of Africa taking place. And this is based on the availability of resources. And this is done by corporations with the backing of their countries. You have a situation now where you say, if you have got the best instruments to discover what minerals are in a particular country, and if you found them, you take the loot yourself. I gave you an example last week that an Australian company had found very large deposits of lithium in Ghana. And from what I understand, they're just going to be mining that lithium ore and take it to Australia to process it, rather than create jobs in Ghana and process it. If they're going to make electrical batteries, batteries for electrical vehicles, which I think is the major use of lithium today, that would create jobs for people in Ghana and also bring in more foreign currency. So I'm just going by the little that I've read in the news, but Ghana also has already taken precedence by telling the Swiss chocolate manufacturers, that they must manufacture, provide the technology to manufacture chocolate in Ghana, and then Ghana can export the chocolate rather than export cacao the way they were doing before. So now the thing is that you find these corporations will come, you think you're just dealing with an individual, who is interested, in coming to mine stuff in your country and so forth. But also what they don't tell you is that is also part of a geopolitical warfare going on between all the superpowers. And we as Africans, we just become pawns, that have got the resources that these people need, and that's that. I'm sure all of us are quite disturbed, that Africa is probably the richest continent on earth today, which still has a lot of resources, and yet we are considered the poorest people on earth. There are two aspects to that. One is for us to believe that we are poor simply because we are not putting our resources into perspective. I was reading an article a few days ago, which was saying the mineral resources in DRC alone are worth $100 trillion, not a billion, $1 trillion. Okay, which means the DRC alone, if we were to exploit the resources in DRC, we wouldn't need foreign currency from anybody. We wouldn't need foreign aid from anyone. But as you all have seen, is that because of the resources in DRC, there's so much destabilization that is taking place all the time. If it is not fomented through so-called tribal warfare, you've got all kinds of rebels, coming out of nowhere. So that is part of the whole scheme, that when you destabilize people, when they're busy fighting each other, you're also busy just looting stuff from their country, because they don't have time to find out what is it that you are taking. And, so you can find that this situation goes on all over Africa. You see this destabilization here in southern Sudan. Actually, one of the issues here, because so much instability in southern Sudan. Southern Sudan is just as rich as DRC is concerned. They just have as many natural resources there. And of course, the fact that the southern Sudan is now an independent country, you find that the level of destabilization is quite high. And the only way to get over that is that we as Africans have to understand, that we are made to fight over crumbs when the real thing, that will make us survive, change our quality of life is being taken away whilst we are fighting. And then I also want to touch a little bit on what I had mentioned last time, that it is very, very important that we understand the resources that we have in our own countries. Quite often I run into young people asking me, oh, what should I do? I don't know what, profession to do. I don't know how to study in college and so forth. Again, as I say, life is always about solving problems that society has. Okay, that should be the source of what you want to do. If you are, if you feel that there's so much, famine and hunger and so forth, why not get into food production? There are several layers of food production one can get into. Can do it even at a village level, where you need maybe just 1 acre, that can, with the technology, that's why you're going to school, that you can now tie up technology, with the processes, for improving food supply to our people. The whole mining sector, as I said, we don't have a single African-owned company that is heavy into mining, that can compete, with the Anglo can BS, even though most of the diamonds, we have them in Africa, but we don't have any African company in an African country, that can compete with these people that come to loot our mineral resources. So for the time that I have, I thought I'll just touch on, a few tidbits. And then if you have any questions, I can deal with them next week. Well, I have maybe 4 minutes. If anybody has any comment or question to make, I'll try to address that in the few minutes that I have. Okay, Ivan, that's what I got for today. Are there any comments and questions? I'll be very
there are a lot of comments.
Yes.
The first comment is from William Michael. Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of its natural and mineral resources. Africa supplies up to 31% of the world's demand for cobalt, gold, manganese, phosphate, and uranium. That was his comment.
Yeah, okay, no, I agree. Again, it comes to the question of us as Africans understanding that what we have, okay? Very, very few people really understand, what the magnitude of the resources that we have. Like I was mentioning last time, that practically maybe every African country has got the gold reserves. We just don't know we haven't done the necessary prospecting, to find out where it is and so forth. You can't have gold in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, and then it jumps to Zambia, it goes to, it jumps to Burundi, and then it goes all the way to Ghana. That doesn't make any sense, so we just have to, know what we have. Anybody else?
Yes.
I see some
Okay.
people with hands lifted up. There's what, Philip also?
Yes, they can write their comments or question in the comment section. And also Susan Mozambique is saying Africa presidents are the richest.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think in comparison to the rest of the society, it may be, depends on a country by country basis, but just say probably at times in Africa, we go into politics to make money. In the West, they go into politics to preserve and protect their wealth. You know, so it's quite possible that, you know, what you're talking about happens. And also, you know, you must take into account that we inherited economic systems and forms of government that are not part of us. We just kind of, you know, stumble into that, and we really don't understand how some of these things work, the relationship between national wealth and what you can have, you know, as a leader, you know. So those things, you know, do happen. There are some African leaders who are genuinely wealthy, not because of that they made their money in government, like the president, you know, of Zambia. You know, they say he's worth about $360 million, but this is money that he made before he became president. You know, so you can't point a finger at a person like that, you know, because he had his own wealth before he got into before he had the position that he had. But definitely there are some leaders, you know, that did loot the state coffers, and the unfortunate thing that they take this money and bank it in Europe. Then when they die or something happens to them, that money is forfeited in Europe and it never comes back to the country where it was taken from.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I'll make up for next week for whatever other questions, you know, you may have had. Yvonne, I see some people still have some hands on. If these are questions and so forth, just take note of that, and I will address them. You know, maybe their questions become our topic for next week. You know, so send me the questions well ahead of time. You know, there. Okay, you all have a wonderful weekend, and it is always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you find my deliberations not to be of help to you. And, you know, adios. Thank you. Aluta continua. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mapondera, for your time. Up next, we have Nana H.U.R for the Pan-African healthcare classes.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yes, good morning.
Let me take a breath. I'm a little rushed this morning. Hi, Yvonne.
Hello.
So welcome to the Pan-African Healthcare class. We are restarting our cycle here where basically we discuss various aspects of holistic health and basically how to stay well, how to feel well, how to overcome health challenges, any health issues that we may have. I think I may have even accidentally forgotten to post for every, I don't know if I posted yesterday. But hopefully you have all of the reading assignments. And so today we're going to talk about what holistic wellness is, just sort of understanding the concepts and that sort of thing. But let me just start with saying, healthcare can include so many aspects. So we know that when we go to the hospital or when we go to the clinic, typically you will find what's called allopathic doctors or medical doctors that usually will specialize in particular diagnosis of illnesses, diseases. They will usually prescribe medications for those things, and they will sometimes limit it there. They may send you to a dietitian to maybe talk about some dietary changes. If there are needs for surgeries or other procedures, they may make referrals for that. If there are structural issues and there have been injuries or things of that nature, they may refer you to physical therapy and these types of things. What holistic wellness focuses on are all of the other components that are sometimes missing when we talk about treating the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. So the focus is going to be wider reaching than just what medication one can take for their conditions, or just putting a name to a condition and then, you know, leaving you with the expectation of living with that condition. So holistic wellness focuses on figuring out what caused the issue and then what you as an individual can do to assist in your healing. I am a holistic practitioner. I am not a medical doctor. I am not one who can treat or cure or give advice on any particular disease or illness per se. I'm here to provide information and educate our people on how to stay well, how to hopefully avoid different illnesses and diseases. But even if there is a particular condition that you may have, that you know how to care for it as best possible. And if it's in conjunction with whatever your doctor has, you know, prescribed, so be it. If it is your own choice to do it holistically or naturally, then you need all the information, right, that you can get in order to do that. But we're going to focus on what nutrition the body needs, what foods to take in, what naturally occurring substance exists on earth that can help bring the body back into balance, whether it's herbs, whether it's homeopathic remedies, whether it's flower essences, whether it's essential oils, what traditional or natural healing modalities exist, whether it is nutrition, whether it's music therapy, whether it's chiropractic care, whether it's acupuncture, whether it's yoga or Tai Chi or Reiki or any number of holistic modalities that may assist you and not just simply give you medications to relieve any symptoms. It may also be you taking note of what you eat every day and keeping a food diary or food journal. It may include keeping a symptoms journal or a symptoms diary of how you're feeling at different points in time. So these are the things that we'll talk about. So that's what I wanted to focus on today. I also wanted to say, Yvonne, so some people have been asking about the shirts. I see that's a big topic, and I see somebody with their shirt. I don't have my shirt on today. My I Love Black People shirt. It might be helpful, two things, because I get emails separate from the classes. If there is a way to get the shirts, I think it would be nice to post that. And for folk who want to get into the WhatsApp groups. So people have asked me, and I said that I would mention that because I don't have an answer when they email me or when they message me separately. If there's a way for people to get the shirts, the I Love Black People shirts, I wore mine yesterday as I was out and about in the world, and I got a couple of comments. So I guess that question might also be for my own benefit as well. but I know you manage a lot of things. So if you can maybe address that or find out that answer and send that to me or post it, that would be great. So I want to pull up the handout. So let me take a second to do that. And I'm also curious. This is week 1, right? Okay, great. So I'm also curious if there are people, because I know there are a lot of people that join every week. I appreciate seeing your faces. Thank you. Quite a few people have their cameras on today. I appreciate you. I want to make sure I acknowledge that, right? Thank you, thank you. And y'all know I like that, so I appreciate you indulging me with that one. What I'd like you to type in, if there's anything that week after week we've maybe not addressed, that is maybe not too specific though, but if there are any areas relating to health that has not been addressed, or any issues or concerns that you have, even if I can't answer them today, I'm curious to just get some feedback. I'm really a hands-on person, and I know with 50 people on, you can't just allow, you know, talking back and forth per se. So I know everyone is muted, but let's take advantage of the chat feature, because I'd really like to get some interaction to see if there's something that's not being covered, or something that is just not in the, you know, normal documentation that I have prepared for these weeks that you're interested in or that you have question about. I'd be really interested to know that. So feel free, please, to chat me about that, so that I can try to address that as I pull up the document for today. And if Yvonne, you'll allow me to share the screen.
Yes, you are allowed.
So, oh, I thought I pulled it up and I didn't, did I? Oh, I didn't, did I? Ha, ha, ha. All right, so it's like, okay, no, nobody gave me a response. Okay, so that means that you're getting all the information you need, or you are not void of any particular topic. I'll take that to mean that. That's what I'll assume there, right? Okay, so, and if you are new and you are not familiar with me, I am trained as a naturopathic doctor. I do not practice anymore due to some restrictive laws in the state that I live in the US here. So I've been doing that, I guess, going on 25 years now. In addition to that, I am a traditional priest in the Akana Kong tradition, rooted in Ghana, West Africa. Have traveled there extensively throughout that country. I am looking, when we get over this whole COVID thing, to expand and do some other travel to some other countries on the continent. Tanzania being the first spot, and then some others. And those from Tanzania that message me, the next time you message me, I want you to find me some tanzanite. It's a crystal, it's a gemstone, right? You get not if you not ask, right? So y'all ask me questions. That's the next thing for you to, before you send me another message, asking me anything, tell me that you can find me some Tanzanite and I will come to Tanzania and will assist you. But I have studied pretty much any natural healing modality that exists. I have practiced hypnotherapy, nutritional counseling, reflexology, massage, energy healing, of course, herbalism. That is my main thing. I've been an herbalist for many years. I've made various products. I can make anything from shampoo to skin cream to herbal teas to bath salts to vaginal boluses, you name it. So things that, toothpaste, deodorant, what have you. So just know that there is a wonderful world of herbs and natural healing that exists. That is my domain. If you ask me about surgeries and medicines, that's not my specialty. I'll always deter from that and refer you back to, you know, a medical doctor if you're interested in some kind of surgeries or procedures or prescription drugs or things of that nature. But my specialty is holistic medicine, right? And whether we are talking about physical health or whether we're talking about spiritual health, those are areas of my expertise. So that is what this class is dedicated to. And it's in, you know, I'm interested in giving you your power back. You have a lot of control. I think the world kind of strips us of a lot of power. And I want you to know that you can take control of your life. You can control what thoughts you have. You can control what foods you put into your body. You can control, you know, your self-talk, you know, your surroundings, people you allow to be in your space and your energy, and who impacts your emotional well-being. And all of those things. And sometimes it's just a matter of changing your mindset, reframing things, looking at things a different way. And that, in this regard, is looking at it from a holistic perspective. So, holistic medicine. This is a form of healing that considers the whole person: body, mind, spirit, and emotions. The quest here, of course, is for optimal health. We know that it has a holistic approach. Everything is interrelated. There's no one aspect and it have nothing to do with the other. It's the whole person. So the holistic wellness definition, the holistic approach, all of these are intertwined, right? And there are guiding principles when we're talking about holistic healing. So I won't read through each of these. This is for your own reference, but just know that it focuses on optimal health, the healing power of love, the whole person, prevention and treatment, not just treating symptoms, right? The innate healing power that God has given us, that each person's body has, integration of healing systems, various systems and modalities, as I've mentioned already. Talks about the holistic relationship centered care, talks about individuality. You know yourself best. Take back your power. When you go to a practitioner, go with your list of symptoms. What's your norm? What's out of place? What your routine is, what you eat, how you generally feel, what your disposition or your outlook is. Go armed with all that information, because you are an individual. You're not like everyone else. So you go and you supply that information as to who you are and what's going on with you. This holistic approach also focuses on the teacher leading by example. So you also have to have someone who will enter into an exchange. You know, they're learning from you and you're learning from them. Which goes into that learning opportunity. Everyone will benefit because no one person will know everything. It will be a healthy exchange. So remember those principles. And I suggest that you use these when looking for a practitioner, or when you're gauging or judging whether you found a good practitioner, or whether this is someone that you want to entrust with your health care, your emotional well-being, your physical health. Do they meet most or all of these principles? Whether they are a medical doctor or a holistic practitioner or traditional healer, what you see more of these principles than not. And this handout here simply focuses on different types of, some people call alternative therapies. I like to just across the board traditional or holistic or natural titles rather than alternative. This might be folk medicine, herbal medicine, nutritional therapy, homeopathy, faith healing, new age healing, chiropractic, acupuncture, naturopathy, massage, music therapy, massage, exercise therapy. All of these are considered holistic healing therapies or modalities. And then there are many others. I had Googled in preparing this handout some months ago, and there were pages and pages of different holistic modalities. So just know that there are many others. And at the bottom here, I specifically put here the Sangoma traditional priest, because some of the herbs and things that I will mention, you may or may not have access to depending on where you are. This is who you will turn to, okay? So aside from maybe not knowing exactly what this healer is doing at this moment in this picture, if you focus on behind her, right? You see all of these herbs, all of these medicines, right, from the earth that are lined along her wall, right? This is who you go to when you're looking for local medicines, local herbs and remedies that will address naturally whatever holistic, not holistic, whatever illnesses or conditions that you may have. So next week, we'll talk about herbs. Some of the handouts that I have found will focus on what we would really refer to as Western herbs, or maybe even Chinese herbs or Indian herbs or things of that nature. May not be on the continent, or all may not be readily available. To know what is local and what is available in your area, you go to your traditional healer. So we've talked about some holistic principles. I will not spend a lot of time, but I'm going to touch on those aspects that are important, right? So we talked about an individual's responsibility in their own health and well-being, right? You have the power. You notice something's wrong, act on it right away. Start jotting down, taking notes, being mindful. You know, this is not normal for me, or I'm not feeling quite right. And you may not understand why or have all the answers right away, but you'll then take note and you'll be able to piece them all together as time goes on. Know that you have that innate healing power. We've mentioned that already. The patient or the client is a person, not a disease. So you are not identified by whatever your diagnosis is. You are still an individual that may have that condition. It's similar to people talking about the slaves, right, that came to America. Our ancestors were Africans who were captured and enslaved, okay? They were not slaves. So this is the same concept. The patient is not the diabetic person. They're a person that has diabetes. So you see how that parallels there. So you're a person, not the condition, not the situation that you're in. And then the next concept here is that treatment is about finding the cause of the condition, not just alleviating the symptoms, okay? So this handout, and I'm gonna learn how to not say a lot. It's hard. But people who speak professionally, right, they can flow and not say or and that sort of thing. Diet is important. Detoxification is important. Fasting, foods to avoid, and of course, along with that, knowing what foods to include. These are all things that we'll talk about. Water is key. We know that water is essential. We know that the body is 2/3 water. We know that water is very powerful in nature and in our bodies. And this is one of the many ways that we are connected to nature. We need water. It sustains life, okay? The better options for water, in my opinion, are distilled water or alkaline water. Over the years, there have been many arguments as to what the best source is. I don't spend a lot of time with it. I think distilled is most like water that comes from, the earth. And of course, we know that the body has to be more alkaline than acidic. So if in these days and times, rather than just your regular purified bottled water, what you should look for is alkaline water, water that has been given the right charge to allow the body to be in a more healing stage and healing state than a deficient kind of dry, dehydrated state with those foods and things that we come in contact with that cause acidity. So alkaline water or distilled water is usually my suggestion. Juices and other things we'll mention a little later. Vibration and energy. This is important overall when we talk about holistic healing, who you're around, what the energy is. Living highly vibrational lives are important. That has to do with who you allow in your space. Again, whatever kind of information you allow to your mind and to your spirit, this can affect how high you vibrate. So going into nutrition, it's a lot to talk about in terms of nutrition. I've really tried to just streamline the conversation here for this purpose because there's so much that could be discussed. But in terms of what are nutrients, they are substances that are found in food that provide nutrition to the body, right? And there are 6 main types of nutrition. There are carbohydrates, there are fats, there are proteins, there are vitamins, there are minerals, and then there's water. And we'll briefly go through each of these because I want you to have a basic understanding. And again, for some of you, this is a repeat. I always kind of talk off the cuff, so maybe I'll say something a little different. Some of these charts are a little harder to read than others, but we know that ideally, we want our vitamins and our minerals from foods. We don't want to have to always take pills. Chemical or man-made vitamins are not going to be your best source of nutrients. So you want to learn which foods naturally contain your vitamins and minerals that you need to get the proper nutrition. These handouts focus on what foods naturally contain your essential vitamins and minerals. If we're talking about proteins, you also want to know that not only meats provide proteins, okay? So there are many vegetarians that have great arguments for you as to how they can easily obtain proteins from various plant-based sources. Avocados, asparagus, many different beans and legumes, tofu, tempeh, nuts, seeds, things of that nature. And I think there's even a handout here that talks about or compares, yes, that compares how much protein you can even get from these other sources as opposed to the meat proteins that are listed up top. So, for example, if a chicken breast has 31 grams of protein, right? This is about a 3.5 ounce size of chicken. You can easily get almost double that from a helping of spirulina. Spirulina is a sea vegetable. It comes from the sea. It is a vegetable that naturally grows in the sea. So it's full of minerals and it's high in protein. So it has 58 grams of protein, for example. Or if And most people use this by putting it in shakes or smoothies or cereals. You can add it to your rice milk or almond milk or things of that nature. We also know certain things like pumpkin seeds have just as much protein as chicken. So there are other sources for proteins, not just meat. And not that I think we should eat less meat for sure, but not that I'm even across the board a proponent of not eating meat. I think we most often do harm by eating too much sugar. Lowering your meat or animal consumption is important, but a lot of us get in trouble because we're consuming too many carbs or too many of the wrong carbs, which turns into sugar. So most people get up in arms when you talk about their meat, you know, don't want to give up their chicken or their beef or their whatever. I'm saying at best, decrease your meat consumption and focus a lot on lowering and cutting out your sugar intake. This handout here, basically to give you an idea of what the organs in our bodies do. You can kind of read through this. We'll talk about the filtering organs or the passive elimination a little bit in the 4th class, but so that you understand what some of the other key organs do, I thought that this handout from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics was important. Tells you that the lungs provide oxygen to blood, the heart circulates blood throughout the body, the stomach helps food digest, the intestines, all intestines absorbs nutrients from foods. We know that the colon or the large intestines is what removes or eliminates waste from the body. That's not on here, but I added that because there are 2 types of intestines. They're connected, but then there's the small ones and they're the large ones. The liver removes toxins from blood and processes nutrients from food. And the kidneys filters blood of waste and extra fluids. So further, we get a further definition of what are called macronutrients. Your macronutrients, and again, initially we listed what all nutrients were. So we talked about vitamins and minerals and proteins and carbs and water. So they're separated though into macronutrients and micronutrients. So macronutrients are your proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. We know that proteins, and generally, not that they're exclusively, but if you see the first line, they talk about and found in products, right? But we know that they come from some other sources as well, right? But these foods are what's called our building blocks. They provide the body with amino acids, right? And this helps with growth, development, and the repair and maintenance of body tissues. So we know it's important for the structure such as muscles, tissues, things of that nature, right? And carbohydrates, we know it is our fuel. These are the nutrients that provide energy and fuel for the body, just like a gas provides fuel for your car. And even though there's a need to know what are good carbs and bad carbs, we do know that carbohydrates are essential. They're absolutely necessary. No thing of, I'm not going any carbs. You need carbs, you just need one. And we'll talk about the glycemic index and what are low, medium, and high carb foods in, I think, week 3. But carbs are necessary for energy. And we know that fats, you know, while also given a bad rap, fats are bad, we also need fats. These are foods or nutrients that provide cushioning and essential oils to the body for membranes and cell and tissue in the body. And they also absorb the fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, some other vitamins that are fat-soluble, vitamin E. So it also helps our body to absorb certain nutrients as well, micronutrients, right? And moving on to the micronutrients, these are our vitamins and our minerals, all right? So we know that vitamins aid in energy production, wound healing, bone formation, immunity, eye and skin health. And we know that minerals help maintain cardiovascular health and provide structure to the skeleton. And there are many vitamins and minerals, and I included I think it's a little further. I included this chart that lists various vitamins and minerals, but again, more so for your reference, so that you'll know what each of these vitamins do, where you can find them, and how much you typically need per day. So there's a vitamin chart, there's a mineral chart. Most times we're familiar with a few. What I would encourage you to do is to study some of the ones you're not familiar with. If you're not familiar with chromium or chloride or copper, or some of the ones that are not as commonly spoken about, listen to these as to what they do, what they provide for the body, why they're essential, and how to find them, okay? And then, I'm not sure if I put that, yes. So what I also included is what herbs also provide these micronutrients. So we know that from the charts above, we know what foods you can find vitamin A and B and the minerals calcium or manganese in. This chart here basically tells you what herbs naturally contain these micronutrients. And I think that's key because, again, we don't want to rely on synthetic or man-made vitamin supplements. If you are able to include this in your diet, whether it's a herbal tea that you include in your diet every day, hot or cold, these are teas that you can consciously choose that are providing you nutrition and not just your typical white or black tea just for taste. So some people love drinking hot tea, for example, in the evening or after a meal. So rather it being a Lipton black tea, you can choose something like a peppermint tea or an alfalfa tea or a red raspberry tea or something that will have some healthful benefits. And most of these will be, some will contain caffeine, but most of these will even be caffeine free. So these are going to be better than, say, your standard Lipton tea. So these are our nutrients, macro and micro. I don't keep flipping along here. Let me look at my hard copy. And so again, a lot of information that I do not have time to go through today, but I wanted you to have this as a reference. And we know that there are some minerals that we, by and large, are deficient in. So of course, these are the ones we're usually more familiar with. So you may go straight to those, but just for your information and for your empowerment, go to some of the ones that you're not as familiar with. But for example, if you are feeling fatigued, you feel like you're out of shape, you lose your breath easily, you crave ice, things of this nature, you may be low in iron. There's a long list of herbs that are high in iron, right? So that might be sarsaparilla, that may be alfalfa, that may be fenugreek, that may be Irish moss, horehound, thyme, kelp. These are all herbs that you would include in your diet, whether, again, drinking as a tea or whether adding to your foods that you may boost up your iron. Zinc is important. I've spoken about this before. Zinc is important for everyone, but especially for men. Sexually active men will lose more zinc, for example, than women. So these are herbs that will boost or enhance your zinc. Minerals, echinacea, dandelion, cayenne, alfalfa, burdock, things like pumpkin seeds, various nuts and seeds, green leafy vegetables. These are all high in zinc. A lot of people, as we age, our bones become more brittle. We don't absorb calcium as well. Wait a minute, I just moved past it. Some people have an issue with calcium. So, and I had this discussion this morning with a friend who was asking how to get calcium as opposed to just drinking milk. And so, of course, milk is, in my opinion, not the best way to get calcium, right? Because there are other green leafy vegetables that include high amounts of calcium. But also there are many herbs like horsetail and Irish moss and dandelion and alfalfa and golden seal and red raspberry and kelp and ginseng that all naturally contain calcium. Vitamin D, I think we've discussed previously. In this day and time, a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D. So these are herbs that are high in vitamin D. Alfalfa, chickweed, fenugreek, oat straw, mullein, thyme, red raspberry. So these are things that you can include into your diet if you are lacking enough vitamin D. As we're fighting off infection these days, we know that our vitamin C is important. So elderberry, alfalfa, celery, chickweed, dandelion, yerba mate, echinacea, peppermint, all of these herbs are high in vitamin C, right? So really take note if there has been an assessment with your doctor and you've been told you were deficient in some vitamins or minerals, take a look at this list, you know, especially if you're a tea drinker. And of course, teas are not the only way to consume herbs, and it's probably my least favorite way to consume herbs, but it is an easy way to consume herbs. But you can also get them in capsule form. You can also get them in liquid extract, or what we call tinctures. So there are other ways to consume herbs, but a lot of people I know are tea drinkers. And as I said earlier, why not include herbs that are going to benefit you overall and increase your uptake of nutrients by choosing some that are high in certain vitamins and minerals. So let me go through the questions. Yes, so again, if you want to send me an email, I can send you the handouts. But yes, the people who get the handouts on a weekly basis are those that are in the WhatsApp group. And I think Yvonne can maybe post how to become a part of maybe, I guess, the next WhatsApp group. I'm not sure how that goes. But what I will do is type in my email. So what I would suggest is that you simply send me an email, but it's nanaakua1@gmail.com, and I will send you the handouts. If you've been joining us each week and had the handouts before, they are the same handouts, so you would have those, so you don't need to get a new set. We teach from the same handouts for each cycle. So, but feel free if you're new to the call and new to the class, yeah, feel free to request the handout. Yeah, and it's better for you to email me because I won't be able to write down your email, okay? So the next handout, this talks about healthy diets. And basically the concept is your food shall be your medicine. This is a concept that's credited to Hippocrates, where the wise man should consider that health is the greatest of human blessings, and let food be your medicines. Okay, so what we eat, what we consume, what we put in our bodies, very important. Oh, and I think someone's hand is up. So feel free to write in the chat. I don't think that this platform allows for people to actually ask the questions out loud, but you can certainly add them to the chat. And I always go sort of midway and recheck, or if I notice that a new message has popped up, then I, you know, answer or respond to the questions, okay? So, okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, so there are different types of diet that one might follow. And these are just some options here. Just for your information, if you are looking to maybe alter your diet, improve your diet, these are some choices you may consider, okay? You may consider a raw food diet. And that's where the food you eat is raw, meaning either completely raw or only heated up to a certain degrees. And I want to say the standard is maybe somewhere around 115 degrees or so. So a lot of times dehydrated foods are used, certain food processors that sometimes generate a little bit of heat in breaking down the foods, but it's basically raw, pure foods that have not been heated to high degrees, because sometimes when we heat our foods, we lose the raw nutrients that naturally exist. And sometimes we just cook the food to death, literally, right? And so a lot of people will use this to increase their energy. A lot of times people report not having headaches, like migraines, not getting bloated, losing weight, that sort of thing. Some people will choose a diet where they're juicing or do a juice fast. So even if it's not every day, maybe on a monthly basis or a seasonal basis, you'll have people that will do juice fast. And this is basically using a juicer, a machine. It's different from a blender, but it specifically separates the juice from the pulp of the fruit and vegetable, right? And it is the easiest and most effective way to get just the pure nutrition from the fruits and vegetables. And basically it gives your body a rest from breaking down solid foods that you have to kind of chew, and the body has to really work a little harder to break them down and digest them to retain the nutrients from them. So juicing is a good option. This keeps all the enzymes intact and, you know, will improve your digestion and your absorption of nutrients. So a lot of people will opt for this if they know they overeat, if they know they maybe eat the wrong foods, and just want to give the body a break. Sometimes people, again, will do this seasonally as a cleansing regimen. So with each change of the season, or every, 3 or 4 months, people will do a juice fast. You may do it for 3 days, 7 days, or more. Alkaline diet is another option. This is basically allowing your body to get back to its natural pH. So balancing the alkaline and acid forming foods in the body. I mentioned that a little bit when we talked about water. So this basically is a diet that focuses on foods that are high alkaline foods. And even in general, if you're not exclusively doing alkaline rich foods, you may also decide to do a diet where you are doing 60 to 70% alkaline foods and only 30% or so of acid forming foods. And we know that acid forming foods are typically foods like meats and oil, certain oils or fats, things like that. Alkaline forming foods are going to be most of your fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. So it kind of go hand in hand, not specifically because it still allows for some meat consumption and that sort of thing, some dairy, consumption, but it's very much in line with like a vegetarian diet. And then there's the macrobiotic diet. And this is one that usually includes whole grains and vegetables, and it's based off of the Asian yin and yang concept. So it basically attempts to restore the body back into balance by just eating, again, still a predominantly like vegetarian style. So a lot of cabbages or kimchi types of foods, whole grains, and things of that nature. And then there's a Gershon diet. This kind of combines a couple of different concepts. So not only what you eat, but also doing enemas, natural supplements, raw juices, vegetarian diet, kind of combining them all together in order to reverse certain conditions and help activate the body's ability to heal itself. These are just some ideas. I'm sure there are other types of diets, especially if you're doing a cleansing or detox. There are elimination diets, there are detox diets, there are all kinds of diets. So the main thing is to ask yourself, you know, what's the purpose of the diet? Why are you changing how you're eating? Or even before you get to that point, you can ask yourself, is there a need for me to change how I eat? Is there a need to change my diet? You know, are you suffering from heart disease or diabetes or allergies or high cholesterol or some kind of digestive disorders? Are you in need of losing weight? You know, are you more tired or sluggish than you'd like to be? Are you having body aches and pains? So there are different conditions or illnesses that you may have that would perhaps prompt you to need to change your diet. And while it can be confusing, you know, take your time, go through this information. You can always Google additional information and see what works best for you. It may be a matter of combining a diet change with increasing your exercise or your movement, your mobility, moving your body. It may be changing your diet, increasing your exercise, and doing conscious breathing and meditation or meditative exercise like yoga. So it may be a number of things that you'll need to change or alter in order to feel better. But these are just some ideas. This is, you know, a place to start. You can further look into it. The other thing in terms of eating and whatever diet you have, what is also key is how you eat what you eat. So it's important what you eat. It's important when you eat it, but it's also important how you eat it. So this handout talks about proper food combining so that your body can digest your foods, right? So most of us feel like meat and potato, starch and protein go together. This is not true. So that your body, so especially if you have heartburn, indigestion, acid reflux, if you suffer from constipation, if you have food allergies or food sensitivities, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, any number of gastrointestinal issues, you really have to look at those three aspects of eating: what you eat, when you eat, and how you eat it, okay? So you wanna make sure that you are combining your foods well. Your proteins, such as meats, fish, nuts, soy products, things of that nature, things that contain protein, these foods do not go well with your starchy foods, right? So your starchy foods like grains and seeds, sprouts, beans, potatoes, some of your squashes like winter squash, these two things do not combine well for proper digestion. If you're eating a protein, you should combine it with the various vegetables, right, that we have listed here. So your asparagus, your leafy greens, your corn, your peas, your carrots, your beets, your squash, your summer squash, all of these foods combine well with proteins, okay? Or if you're eating some sort of starches, your potatoes, your grains, your beans, things of that nature, these foods combine well with your vegetables, your leafy greens, your corn, your peas, your beets, your turnips, your summer squash. These combine well. Protein go with vegetables, starches go with vegetables, but we do not consume proteins and starches together in order to get the best digestion possible. It even gets a little more intricate here when we're talking about fruits, because fruits are into three different categories: acidic fruits, subacidic fruits, and sweet fruits, right? And so there's even, you know, a recommendation of how to eat your fruits. We don't mix vegetables and fruits. It's a poor combination. And I know a lot of people these days are into smoothies and they're into just throwing any and everything into the blender and mixing them up, right? But these do not combine well. There are different enzymes in the stomach that are required to digest different categories of foods. And so vegetables, and let me bring this down a little bit. So we know that vegetables and any kind of fruit is a poor combination, right? So I've always suggested when people are juicing or doing smoothies, vegetables go with vegetables, fruits go with fruits. And so it doesn't matter that there's a recipe online or you have whatever fitness guru that's saying, put your spinach and your strawberries and your mangoes and all of that. They have these places that sell these things and they put all these things together. It doesn't matter, okay? These are not good combinations. And the last handout, right? The last handout is just basically some important elements of healthy eating. So these are just some health tips. This is how, we talked about how to eat with the food combining. This is along the lines of what and how to eat. So you want to eat whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, vegetable proteins, things of that nature. Ideally, you would do foods that are fresh. If you can't, frozen is good. Our last best option when we're talking about foods is canned. We really want to avoid cans. They have sat for, you know, there's a canning process for them to have a long shelf life. Maybe from a survivalist standpoint, there are some things that might be prepackaged and set aside for hard times. But as a rule of thumb, on a day-to-day, we shouldn't really consume canned fruits and vegetables, okay? Also, we want to eat only pure quality foods. We don't want a lot of sugars or fats or additives or synthetic colors. So if it has FD&C red number 40 or FD&C yellow number 5 or 6, these are synthetic colors. And in many parts of the world, they've been banned. It's known that they have cancer-causing agents in them. These are not additives that we should have in our food. So you should read your labels for colors, for artificial sugars. That's a whole nother thing. And usually anything that ends in OSE, so sucrose, dextrose, lactose, fructose, all of these are types of sugars. And of course, some of those sugars that I named are better than others. So for example, fructose is fruit sugar. So that's of course better than your sucrose, which comes from the processed, you know, sugar cane. But what you really want is a pure or raw sugar or cane sugar in a food, or you want the herb stevia, or you want some more natural sweeteners like agave nectar or monk fruit, xylitol. These are things that are natural sweeteners. But maltodextrin and dextrose and all these things, these are sugars and these are not good for you. Are we going to 11:30, Yvonne, or?
45.
Okay, so we can also limit what we drink when we are eating. We know that liquids, right? Drinking a big tall glass of water, tea, soda, or what have you while you're eating is a bad idea. These dilute the digestive juices that the body naturally has in the stomach, okay? So we want to limit how much we drink to only 4 ounces with each meal. Ideally, you would wait at least 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour until after you've eaten before you drink larger quantities of your fluids, okay? Also, chew your food thoroughly. Eat in a relaxed environment, never eat when upset. This also interferes, you know, everything is related. When we talk about mind, body, and spirit being interrelated, we don't eat when we are extremely upset. And that's whether we're really happy or really sad, right? This interferes with digestion. You want to get sufficient fiber in your body. We will talk about, I think in week 4, we'll talk about cleansing and detoxification, and we'll talk about high fiber foods and how they cleanse the colon. These are essential so that the large intestines can remove waste from the body, okay? So we can get that from psyllium husk or flaxseed. We can get it from certain fruits like apples, pears, grapefruit. They have natural fiber in them called pectin. So all of this is important. Drink 6 to 8 glasses of water daily, plus whatever herbal teas. We have a whole list, right, of herbal teas that we know that contain different vitamins and minerals in them. Include those, but also pure, the cleanest, purest natural water you can find. This handout says 6 to 8 glasses. Generally in the holistic world, what we talk about is determining that based on your size. So the rule of thumb is half your weight in ounces. So if you are 190 pounds, for example, you need 80 ounces of water. No, you need 80. Wait a minute, can I count today? Can I count today? It's more than that. It's 90 ounces. Ooh, I can count sometimes, maybe. Or let's say you're 150 pounds, and I wish, but you need 75 ounces of water a day. If you're 200 pounds, you need 100 ounces of water. So sometimes, depending on your size, you may need a little more water than the 6 to 8 glasses a day. So, but on average, that is sort of what we've come up with or what the standard has become. But the point is to really get multiple glasses of water. And typically we're talking 8 to 10 ounces when we're saying glasses of water, right? And we've already talked about what kind. I usually will only use alkaline or distilled. Use nutritional supplements and herbs as appropriate. So yes, based on your situation, if you know you're deficient in certain vitamins and minerals, then you know you may need to supplement. And again, supplement with whole food-based supplements, not synthetic supplements. Use the herbs themselves that have those nutrients that you need, so that you're not adding in synthetic or man-made supplements. Supplement your digestive function as needed. So if you know you digest foods or your digestive system is compromised and you're not digesting foods properly, you may need to get digestive enzymes, or you may need to get pancreatic enzymes. You may need to get hydrochloric acid. These are all easily found in the digestive section of, say, a health food store or online. These foods help you digest your foods if you're having problems. Also, and if there are certain foods that you know aggravate you, eliminate those foods. If you're eating and something is agitating you and you're not sure what it is, keep a food diary. So for 3 weeks at least, keep track of everything you consume each day and note whatever symptoms you have. When I used to do consultations, that was a normal part of what I would give to clients. Is I made up sort of a little food diary where I listed, upon rising, you know, you fill in what you take in, whether it's water with lemon, or if it's nothing, fine, or what you take in for breakfast, what you take in for snacks, lunch, dinner, and then you make note of how you felt, right? Were you full of energy? Were you sluggish? Was your stomach a little upset midday? You know, keep track of those types of things to figure what foods might be causing you a problem. And then what you would do, right, is you would then eliminate those foods that you suspect, right? So that's sort of when you get into an elimination diet. An elimination diet is more like you cut out certain foods for a period of time to see if your symptoms improve, right? And you'll know, oh, okay, I must have some kind of sensitivity. And it may not be a full-fledged allergy to a food. It just may be a sensitivity that is your body saying you need to kind of relax on taking this types of food in. Also, moderate your use of alcohol, caffeine, and nicotine. So any of these things in excess, really cut them out. If you need to seek help for these types of things, then do that. Because alcohol, we know, will kill you. It will destroy your liver. And even though the liver is very resilient, thank God the liver is probably one of the most, I don't know, God made sort of all of our organs. The heart is very resilient, but the liver is very resilient. It can even regenerate itself. So, you know, it takes a real beating. Prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, recreational drugs, alcohol, caffeine, all of these wreak havoc the liver. So you really want to do these things in moderation. So even though your liver may have been good and you know, have really been abusing it and it's still been going, it will not go forever. So you really have to be conscious of that. Exercise. If you don't get enough exercise, you got to start. Movement is key. It helps with circulation, of oxygen in the body, with blood in the body. It helps with any kind of body pains, stiffness, aches, and all of this that you may have in your body. Increases your flexibility, your strength, your endurance, all of that. So some kind of exercise routine is important. If you're just walking at a high pace several times a week, or if you're jogging, if you're doing calisthenics and just getting good stretching, all of these are good. All of these are key. If you are maintaining regular elimination, we've already talked about that. Like I said, we will talk in more depth about that in week 4, but proper bowel movements, regularity, cleansing out the colon or large intestines, very important. Your exercise, your diet, all of that is very important, and it affects your bowel movements. You should at least go once or twice a day. I've said this before, it cannot be, you know, straight from that. You can't say, oh, I didn't go today, but I'll probably go tomorrow. You have to do whatever you need to do. Drink water, take some herbal laxatives, cut out meats and sugars and fats, change whatever you need to do so that you have a bowel movement at least once a day, okay? Sometimes it's using probiotics, which is like acidophilus and other digestive bacteria to replace the good bacteria in the colon. They call it intestinal flora. Sometimes we have to increase that so that our bowels can get regulated and we move out any disease-causing bacteria that is, because that's what it does. It just sits in the colon. Disease-causing bacteria will just sit and wait in the colon and fester up and cause disease in the body. So you have to eliminate regularly. And the last is just simply for your, you know, information. It's for self-evaluation. This is a diet check questionnaire, gives you an idea of how well you're doing or how badly you need to improve, right? So it just gives you some yes and no questions. And if you score a certain number, it tells you where you are in your diet and where you need to find room for improvement, whether you're doing okay, right? Or whether you really, 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 you know, need to make some changes. So I think that is all of the handouts. Let me see what comments or questions people have. So it looks like some people have added their email. What I want you to do, the email that I posted, nanaakua1@gmail.com, what I need you to do is send me an email, okay? So not posting your email, what I need you to do is send me an email asking for the handouts, and I'll gladly send you those. And in case you missed it and can't find it, scroll through, or by scrolling through, I'll post it again. But nanaakua1@gmail.com is my email. So send that. And usually in a day or two, I will, send out the packet. If you don't have any of the packets and have never received any of them from me, just say send all of the packets, because there are 4. So this is week 1 that we've gone over today, right? This is week 1. But next week I'll have week 2, and then week 3 and week 4. But if you know you're not in the WhatsApp group and you don't have any other handouts, just type. I think I was accidentally muted for a second. But yeah, so you can just send a request asking me to just send all of the handouts, okay? So I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. It's kind of been on my heart to share is, I know the world is changing. Supposedly things are better, things are improving, but kind of not really. So I want to reinforce, right, the concept that we still have to be mindful of our health and our well-being. I think we still have to be very discriminatory about where we go, how many people we're around. I don't know where everyone is in the world, but I would limit our gatherings, still wearing masks, still making either your own hand sanitizer. I just use alcohol, the rubbing alcohol. Some places call them spirits, or even if it's actual spirits, like drinking alcohol. All of these things have cleansing agents in them. And I just add essential oils. Usually essential oils, so like this one, for example, is called Health Shield, right? But there are many. And so there are certain essential oils that are great for killing germs, and great for hand sanitizers and cleansing surfaces and space. Things like lemon, rosemary, tea tree oil, cinnamon, clove. These are all essential oils that you can simply add. So you can make your own hand sanitizer or spray sanitizer, aerial sanitizer to spray on surfaces, doorknobs, what have you. But I would just encourage us to all still be mindful of that. You can use these things in a diffuser. This is a diffuser that I have. Amazon and other little places have them. This purifies the air, since we know that some of what is going on, but this corona thing deals with your respiratory system. I run these in at least a couple of rooms in my house. I sleep with a diffuser, an aromatherapy diffuser every day, every night, I should say. But to keep your air as clean and pure as you can, with different essential oils that kill off germs, is key. So I highly encourage you to still do these types of things to keep ourselves safe. Take whatever natural supplementation that you have available to you. We'll talk next week about herbs. And so we'll talk about those, and I'll highlight those that deal with boosting the immune system. Yeah, so someone else posted their email. So I need you to send me an email requesting it. What kind of foods enhance weight gain? So usually if you increase like your proteins and your good carbs, and someone else is still asking about the handouts, you have to email me requesting the handouts. You have to email me, not put it in the chat. But even if you are looking to gain weight, you still want to make sure that the quality of food that you have is still good. So you still don't want to just load up So you still want high quality foods. You still want the good carbs because you still don't want to create an environment for certain illnesses or certain conditions. Yeah, so herbs so in terms of foods, still good carbs because you don't want to havoc on your pancreas and create a condition like hypoglycemia or diabetes or things like that. But maybe adding smaller meals, 4, 5, 6 meals a day, but you still want good quality foods. Protein shakes can also add to that. So adding a protein shake with a meal can also add if you're trying to get pounds. And it's a long question, and I think I got the gist of it, right? But herbs that I personally have used during this whole COVID-19 thing: golden seal, elderberry, olive leaf, wild cherry bark, echinacea, horehound, and mullein. Now this might sound like, I don't know, French and you speak English, right? But, or this may sound like tree and you speak fra-fra, but these are names of herbs. We will talk about a lot of these next week. So I think that the question is asking what natural herbs can do that. And let me just say, smoking anything. So I think one of the questions is about smoking marijuana, and marijuana comes up, and I don't know if this is the same person asking me about marijuana, right? But marijuana has come up several times on the call. Marijuana definitely has healing benefits, but the one thing about that is anything you smoke, even a natural plant that has healthful benefits like marijuana, can still impact your lungs negatively. So might even be a better option. There are people who do edibles, you know, they cook with the marijuana plant. They infuse the oil, add that into different dishes, whether it's food dishes, whether it's dessert dishes, but they call them edibles. That will probably be a better option because just smoking something is still going to negatively impact your lungs, okay? So I know I'm at my time. I think I got all of the questions. Again, if you have kept sending your email, you have to email me. I will send out the packet. And thank you for joining. I hope you got a lot out of it. And we'll be back next week. I'll send out the assignments in the WhatsApp group, and I'll see you all next week. So peace and good health. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thank you very much, Nana Akua, for the good presentation. And enjoy the rest of your weekend too.
Thank you.
Yes, up next we have Dr. Wright and Lynn. Dr. Wright, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm here. Okay, you'll see me momentarily. Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. You'll see me in a second. I'm on 2 devices, so you might like see me moving in one, and then you're gonna see me join in another. But 1 second. So let me get my camera. Do what it should. Hi, everyone. Okay. Sorry about that. That was me. When you flip the screen one way or another, it does that. It puts you back on mute. And I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so good. I don't know. It's not morning in a lot of places, but it's still morning here where I'm at. So good morning good afternoon, good early evening, everyone. My name is Tyreen Wright, and I'm your instructor or professor for this course, Pan-African History and Organizing, which is an ideological course. I have the syllabus that I'm going to share, but I'm also gonna, I always mix up my dates because we roll right from one class to another. So I'm just gonna share the critical points in the syllabus with you, and then you'll get the updated one in your WhatsApp in the course. The courses, because we have several groups there for this particular course. So I'm gonna put my headset on because I'll probably be moving around a little bit and I want to be clear. Can you all still hear me? It's fine. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect, good. And for me to get right there in my ear. So I'm just gonna read to you all the syllabus. Listen, I have to warn you all, I am bad. Talk to the administrators in the chat group about joining. How to enroll in the class, Claudie, okay? And good morning. So I'm bad about, you know, going into great detail and introducing myself, but I will at some point for a couple of minutes, just tell you a little bit about myself and, you know, just my credentials or what leads me to teach such a course. And it's so funny because of what leads me to teach such a course is probably not my traditional academic education as much as it's my political education that's outside of the university and classroom. But that being said, I'm going to, and you all can ignore the dates on this, but I'm going to correct that really quickly because when I put this together again, it was August. We're 4 days into September. And so that's slightly different, but no problem. We're just going over the overview, the course description, and the outcomes, learning outcomes that we have for this course. So let me momentarily, okay, good. I'm already in the right place. Let me momentarily share my screen and get to that so you know what you're dealing with, what you have signed up for, okay? And we roll right from one semester to the next. So this is the course description. Well, this is the title of the course, right? Introduction to Pan-African History and Organizing, where I love Black people. And this is the summer, but it's really September. So let's go with it. I haven't actually changed anything from the last cycle, which was literally ended last week, to this one, but I have changed the, you know, the dates on the finalized one. But the course description is, this is an introduction to Pan-African history and organizing, an ideological development course that surveys the history of Pan-Africanism as a theory and practice. The seminar is structurally designed to examine and engage in a critical analysis of the theories and practices of Pan-Africanism as both a political and ideological impetus for organizing African people globally. The course begins with the historical foundation of Pan-Africanism at the turn of the 20th century as a budding concept in the African diaspora and the Americas. It became the impetus for international organizing in Europe, Pan-African Conference, which we're going to learn about, and finds its highest expression in Africa as a liberation struggles against colonialism and the ideal of continental unity, okay? So let me say that again, because I want to be clear. All right, it became the impetus, Pan-Africanism, for international organizing in Europe, the first Pan-African conference, and finds its highest expression in Africa as liberation struggles against colonialism and the idea of continental unity. Many have questioned the measurable results produced by Pan-Africanism. This course explores this idea and qualifies the practice and production of Pan-Africanism in light of measurable social, political, economic, and material gains for African people, for African Black people globally by examining policy cases, conference resolutions, and various approaches employed by early proponents of Pan-Africanism, African nationalist, organizational bodies, and institutions. So that was a mouthful. I'll explain a little more, but I want to go right into the learning outcomes. So this is what you should expect to learn, right? You should have a working definition of Pan-Africanism, knowledge of its specific history, development, and emergence as an ideology. And ideology means theory coupled with practice in the world. The ability to define qualified Pan-Africanist thought, speech, and action across various technological mediums, social media platforms, virtual realities, and brick and mortar spaces. The ability, 3, is ability to qualify what policies, legislation, organizational initiatives, and or general practices are Pan-Africanist in nature and beneficial to African and Black people. 4, the ability to identify imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism as oppressive and exploitative systems as they have manifested throughout the African world, Africa, and its diaspora. The means and methods through which African and Black people have organized, fought, resisted, and liberated themselves and nations from imperialism, colonialism, and the ways in which neocolonialism is currently being resisted. The role of Pan-Africanism as a primary strategy and tactic in the effort to eliminate racism and xenophobia. The ability to differentiate multiple perspectives through an analysis of different case studies built on measured, evidence-based arguments and research essays. 8, the ability to apply the knowledge acquired in this seminar to the active role and responsibility as ambassadors of I Love Black People in eradicating racism and xenophobia. The ability to qualify, and qualify again everything before declaring it substantial or beneficial to African and Black people locally and globally. I can't stress that point enough. And last but not least, 10 of the learning outcomes, number 10, develop a measurable results orientation regarding business practices and services, policy and political agendas, legislative initiatives, organizational efforts, and institutional practices, right? Because you all as ambassadors are going out there to qualify various businesses in every industry imaginable, right? This year, the focus was on healthcare. But we always want to make sure that the end result, that at the end of the day, that business or that business professional is rendering services that are not harmful and destructive to African and Black people, ultimately, right? So if the bottom line is that it's harmful to us, that's not where we want to be. And we want to make sure that we don't allow anyone else to end up in a situation where they're victim or they're on the receiving end of unsavory practices that are rooted in racism and xenophobia. Okay, so the seminar themes are just a few 5: Pan-Africanism, unity, as the primary organizing tool, weapon, strategy for eradicating racism and xenophobia against African and Black people. The historical role, importance, and use of the dialectical means conversing, discourse, sharing, relationship between African and Black people globally as an effective strategy and tactic in combating white supremacy, racism, and xenophobia, which is a global pandemic. Synthesizing and application of Pan-Africanist thought, speech, and action in everyday scenarios and challenges. Synthesizing is taking a concept or theory and imposing it on an existing context. So taking the theory of Pan-Africanism and imposing it on your day-to-day life, right? Imposing it on your interactions. So that would be synthesizing it. Okay. The role of education, specifically history, in eliminating ignorance, divisiveness, propaganda, and individualism amongst African and Black people in the effort to achieve Pan-Africanism, unity. And, you know, you see how I put unity in parentheses in the sense that, you know, Pan-Africanism, another way, and we'll get into the definitions, another way to say Pan-Africanism is unity, but talking about unity on a global scale, unity on a larger scale than just unity maybe in a particular country, right? We want, even though, let's just be clear, when we talk about unity, we want unity everywhere. We want unity in our homes, in our communities, in the nations that we live in. And then we want to extend that to African people globally so that we're working with each other internationally. And this is a perfect example, right? We're working across borders. And then 5, and the final one, is global Pan-Africanism, the unification of African people for the purpose of eradicating exploitation and oppression. Racism is a direct solution to the condition of African and Black people. A lot of people think that what we should be up to is, you know, what we should be up to is, you know, fighting, you know, fighting the power, right? However, the power as much as it is to achieve unity, which will insulate us, right? So even when we fight the power in real overt and strong ways, unity insulates us from the harsh reality of racism and xenophobia, right? Because coming together protects us. Okay. And yes, I think off the top of every head, when we start talking about unity, it's kind of like look at the guy to the left and look at the guy to the right, and you might have far more conflicts and issues with those people in proximity to you because of the simple fact that you are in proximity to each other, right? Because you are neighbors, because you know each other, because you already have developed age-old relationships with them and have differences and have likes and dislikes about the people in proximity to you. So this is really at the core of what we always have to do when we talk about achieving unity, because those struggles are far more intense, right? How to get the guy who's been your neighbor since the dawn of humanity, literally, to get together with you and fight a common, you know, enemy, or fight a common tractor that actually gets to exploit both of you, right? That's a huge, huge thing. I always say to people, you know, especially out here, you guys probably know that I'm in the United States. And I always say to people, we spend literally, most people, African people, Black people, and I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. For me, I identify as an African person. That being said, a natural characteristic of being an African person is to have melanin. And therefore, in this racialized world, we very often call that simply Black, okay? And that's fine. But we also know that when we invoke saying African, you know, that also broadens it, because, you know, then you put yourself on the African continent, and that's your indigenous relationship to the continent. But also, it also invokes values. And I do believe what Sheikh Anta said, or asserted and theorized about in his book called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, which means that as many differences as we have a common thread. So we have a common thread of values that runs through most of our cultures, okay? And I'm not saying we need to be the same. We shouldn't be the same. Why would we be? But we need to be unified on the most critical issues. That being said, what I was about to say as an example, or offer as an example, here in the West, we spend a lot of time in spaces where, or establishments and institutions where we are, many people, not we, it's not so much me. I don't do this a lot, meaning I don't spend my day trying to prove to anyone that I'm not a stereotype. But most of us do spend a great deal of our time in white institutional spaces, on their jobs, in their spaces, trying to prove to them that we are not the stereotype, the myth, right? And however, we spend almost no time struggling with our brother next to us to come to an understanding that we have more in common than not. And most of all, we have a common struggle, and we have a common interest in the desire to protect our lives from racism in particular, which is deadly. Okay, it is deadly. Racism has a death toll attached to it. Okay, so that's part of why you do the work that you do in this organization as ambassadors, because it has claimed many lives, and it will continue to claim many lives. Many people feel like, you know, last year was a revelation to them. It wasn't a revelation for me. I do this work already. However, for many, it was a revelation to them that racism was this deadly scourge that would claim a man's life on the street, you know, namely George Floyd. But most of us who are paying attention know that this has always been the case, right? Now you have cameras everywhere. All of us are walking around. We're walking and talking media outlets, in the sense that any of us can do on-site reporting at any given moment in time, right? And so that's how it's captured by multiple people on site. But it has always claimed a death toll. And what I mean by death toll is a lot of people have died, right? Not because they're Black, but because we have very active racists in the world who are willing to take people's lives because they are racist. I mean, that's another thing too that we will work on in here, rhetorical structure, just a little bit. I'm not gonna say anybody died because they're Black, because nobody dies because they're Black or African, but people die because racists are willing to murder people, okay? Period. Let's put the blame where it belongs, right? Nobody's dying because they're Black. We live our whole lives being well melanated and Black and African, and it doesn't kill us. Matter of fact, it's good for us. That being said, racists are very active. Racists are willing to murder you and I. And so that gives us every reason under the sun to work and struggle for our unity, because unity is going to produce the level of protection that we need in a hostile world and society. Okay, so it's 12:07. I have about little less than 40 minutes to go. I guess I'll talk just a little bit about, so the course is 4 weeks. This is the first lecture. I guess I'm going to share the first text in here, and then and then you will read it. But also what I'm going to do is something that I've been doing for the last, I think it's been the last 2 or 3 cycles, began to share a film that I use for my other students on the university level. And for a while I was not using it in this context. And I had to say, why not? I should be having this conversation about who we are, who is, what is humanity, who is human, what that means, where humanity began, and all of that in the contemporary context. And so I am going to share a film called The Journey of Man, a Genetic Odyssey. Why? Because for us to all come to rise up to the same level of consciousness in this course, in this seminar, we need to understand where humanity began, because it's really not about some of the things that we think it's about, right? Our struggle is about. Our struggle is about our right to be on this earth, to go anywhere as human beings and live free from negation on every single level. Okay? When you go to the gas station, they're going to respect your humanity. When you go to the dentist, he's going to respect your humanity. You're going to demand that. When you're in the supermarket, he's going to respect your humanity. When you're on the job, you want your humanity respected. And that is unequivocal, right? It's like Malcolm X said, we declare our right as human beings, right, to defend ourselves. And we're going to do that by any means necessary, right? So we have a right to roam, walk, run, skip around the earth, free of negation, man or woman and child, on every level. So, there's never a better place than with human beings to have a conversation about where and who we are. Okay? And so the core of this film, which is a documentary, basically challenges this concept of race to begin with, right? Because race in actuality is not real. Race is a social construct created by Europeans around 400 to 500 years ago and counting. And they have imposed, so in other words, it's not real, it's not biologically provable, okay? However, out of Europe, they bring this concept, they impose it on the world. So it's like me making something up and having the power to make everyone else adhere to this make-believe creation, that this make-believe reality that I have, right? Because I have the power to impose it on it. So you're this, you're that, you're this, and yes, impose it and back it with force and systematic violence. That's how it's happened. Okay, I could get more detail, but I'm gonna leave it at that. You will hear me call it a pathology, because it is a pathology. It is an illness. It is not real. And when you act on something that's not real with violence, you are in a state of pathology. Okay. So most of the time, let me just go back. So this idea or this pathology called racism emerges in Europe, primarily in the Iberian Peninsula, and it comes out into the Americas. It's spread across the world, carried by Europeans. That being said, it doesn't make it real. It is part of their ideation. It's part of their story. You know, it's like James Baldwin said, I am not your Negro, right? But you have to think, whoever created the Negro, which is a fictitious thing, it's not real, had to have a need to create that, right? Had to have a desire to create that. So what was their reality? What was their context? Why did they need to create a person or a caricature or an entity that was going to be marginalized in relationship to them because of resources, right? So, you know, I want to emphasize how long we have been here, African people, and how short of a time they have been here. Okay, they being Europeans who have created this racial pathology that has infected the world. Okay, humanity, just so you know, in the way that we understand humanity to be Homo sapiens sapiens, that's what you and I are, have existed. I have kittens and they want to jump on my desk. Okay, they have existed, human beings, for 200,000 to 300,000 years. It's a long time. If you don't know what 200,000 to 300,000, hi, how are you? You don't know what 200,000 to 300,000 years is, think about $200,000 to $300,000. You know what that is, right? $200,000 to $300,000. So you know what $100,000 is? 200,000 to 300,000 is the best way for me to describe it. That being said, Europeans have only been on this earth literally 7,000 to 8,000 years. 2 seconds. Okay, you get that? 7,000 to 800,000, 7,000 to 8,000, not 100,000, not 100 anything. 7,000 to 8,000 years. That's 2 minutes, if that, in the story of, in our long story as human beings. In that short amount of time, they have managed to come out of Europe, steal, kill, and do it, and spread their ideology called racism, this pathology. And so, you know, our job is to, you know, put things back in order, period, right? And it starts with our own context. It starts wherever we are. That's where it starts, putting things back into order. Okay, so I show this film, The Journey of Man, a Genetic Odyssey, precisely for the purpose of initiating that conversation about who we are. And I might even just show a clip of it just to, you know, excite you so that we can get to it. Now, what the film literally does is take this theory that humanity began in Africa and in the interior of Africa, and then human beings migrated out of Africa and populated the rest of the world. And when I say human beings, that is synonymous with African. Okay, so I'm gonna credit one of my classmates once again. I'm gonna wear this quote out, but I have a classmate who said long ago, not even that long ago, but long enough ago, that there are no human beings who live outside a cultural context, construct. The first human beings, so in other words, no human being lives outside of culture. Culture is how you do everything, how you eat, how you sleep, how you pray, how you bury your dead. No human beings have lived outside a cultural construct. Okay. The first human beings on earth are African. Therefore, to be human for most of the time that we have been on this earth means to be African. Okay? They are synonymous, right? No human beings have ever lived outside of a cultural construct or context. It means the first human beings are in Africa. Therefore, to be human has initially, for most of the time on this earth, has meant to be African. They are synonymous. Okay, yes. Blackness is a natural characteristic. It's our human jacket. It's called melanin. You know, don't leave home without it, right? So, and most of us don't, right? We don't leave home without. So that's, you know, that's neither here nor there. So I use those terms interchangeably, but I always, when I say human, when I say Africa, I mean human. When I say human, I mean African first, okay? For sure. That being said, the film qualifies a theory that human beings originated in Africa. Little rogue strand migrates to different places. Well, I don't want to say a rogue strand because many people migrate outside of Africa. However, basically, it is the cradle of humanity, and it is the story of peopling, is the story of the peopling of the world. Sorry about that. Somebody's trying to call me at the same time. And I was supposed to be on my other camera, but I just said, whatever. I think this is working fine. That being said, he takes the theory that exists, does not originate with Europeans, and he qualified against DNA. Okay, and it is the first time it's ever done. The geneticist in the film, he's a European, and I'm very critical of everything he says. This is not a religious class. This is not anything. He is an expert in his field, and that's it. Okay, he's no authority to humanity or in any way. So he says some things that are not correct, like Europeans invented science. We know that that's complete nonsense. He didn't. We can talk about that too, right? Europeans didn't invent science. Okay, not at all. Actually, when science was probably invented, they weren't even really around, or they weren't around like that. Okay, they were still. Well, I won't go there, but they were still in their original habitat environment. That being said, so we know, you got to just make the little amendments in your head. The important thing in this film, important things are, one, he is able to qualify this theory of the migration out of Africa and the peopling of the world by Africans, the Homo sapiens sapien. By using DNA mapping and taking a sample through the blood of various people and looking for a genetic marker amongst the male population. And he is able to, in essence, qualify this age-old theory that we have always known and have always had. Okay, so that's it again. The other thing you want to pay attention to, because this directly relates to what we are doing, is pay attention to the attitudes in the film as moves around the world from the continent of Africa. He starts with the Khoisan of South Africa, okay, who we know are to date the oldest people on Earth, okay? And then he goes to Australia. Pay attention to the attitudes of Australians, the Aboriginal people. Pay attention to the attitudes of the people he meets in Asia about this idea, this theory that he is seeking to prove or disprove, which is that we all find our origins on the African continent, okay? And that will tell you some of what we're up against. Pay attention to the attitudes of the Navajo when he gets here to the Americas and he shares his findings with them, because their attitudes are indicative of this worldwide pathology called racism, in spite of the fact that the science ultimately puts their place of origin on the African continent. Why would this be provocative to anyone? It shouldn't be. Okay. However, their notions, their beliefs, their ideas in the light of worldwide white supremacy and culture about what it means to be African is scary. Okay. And definitely has an impact on how they treat, relate to, or don't relate to Black people, African people around the world or in proximity to them. Okay. So I'm going to leave it. I think I'm going to leave it at that because it's 12:22 here. I'm going to leave it there for you to ask some questions. I'm going to share the film in the WhatsApp groups so you can watch it. We will talk about that film in the course of the week. You know, you just give me some of your thoughts. And I'll give you feedback, and we just talk, you know, bounce around the whole concept. But then there'll be other readings. You'll have the other readings for week 1, which will allow you to navigate the first time we organize ourselves as African people around the world under the context and the name Pan-Africanism. Okay. And so, in other words, you'll have a chapter that will introduce you to the history of Pan-Africanism as it constitutes itself in the world during the year of 1900 at something called the First Pan-African Conference. So there's 2 things you're going to do this week. You're going to watch the film as soon as possible and the documentary, The Journey of Man, a Genetic Odyssey. And you're going to read a chapter called, my entry point is from a chapter that I wrote called Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanist. I use this chapter not because it's like the most splendid thing ever, or because I wrote it. It's not, I mean, well, it's good to me. However, what I know what's in there because I actually wrote it. So I want to make sure that you all understand that this thing called Pan-Africanism was truly how it comes to be as a phrase, right? Who coined the phrase and how it comes to manifest itself in the world had everything to do with number of African people coming together and acknowledging that everywhere we are, we have a common condition, and we all make a contribution to this concept of Pan-Africanism. Okay. And then quickly, we will move on to concrete ways, because one of the things you're going to learn in here most of all is that Pan-Africanism is not some religious ideology, some feel-good ideology. It's about producing measurable results for African people. That's the problem that we have had with people challenging or just debunking Pan-Africanism, like, hey, what does it produce? It hasn't produced anything. It has. I know it has produced because I wrote 2 pieces in where the measurable results of Pan-African activity on the part of someone people didn't even consider a Pan-Africanist produced results literally that still exist today, like the preservation of Liberia and the Liberian crisis, okay? And, you know, there's a lot of criticism when we start talking about Liberia and Africans from the United States who survived slavery. Trust me, all those things are in consideration in this case, right? So it's not the run-of-the-mill kind of analysis. But also the African exclusion measure, which is the other case I write and talk about, which challenged U.S. foreign policy and their desire to implement a racist policy to lock African people and Black people out of the United States from 1915 on. So 106 years ago, they passed legislation in the Senate to lock African people out of the United States. It was once again, people did not consider a Pan-Africanist who challenged and defeated this measure. That's why folks could have a Garvey in the United States who would organize the largest Pan-Africanist and Black nationalist organization the world has ever seen, because of this guy that nobody thought was a Pan-Africanist. And yes, everybody who enters the United States after that would be a beneficiary of the defeat of this racist legislation, okay? And this racist legislation also put African and Black people in the same category as undesirables and criminals attempting to enter the United States. So attempting to cut African people off in the United States from African people outside of the United States. Very divisive tactic, but also, you know, using a genealogical argument to say that we are undesirable and criminal, that we are inherently undesirable and criminal, right? Just by virtue of being Black or African, right? And how did one decide who was who? You know, that's a whole nother question. But that being said, that measure and that amendment to the large immigration bill was defeated. And what did it produce? Everybody you all know around the world that is produced in the United States, that's what it produced. It allowed Marcus Garvey to come into the United States. It allowed Barack Obama, even though he didn't, I'm sorry, those of you who are in the US and love Obama, but he didn't do a damn thing for an African person anywhere on this earth. But it allowed him to come here and his father to come here and make that connection and be born, right? Otherwise, he would have been locked out. His father would have been locked out from the United States. Obama wouldn't have existed. But even Malcolm X, whose mother had Caribbean roots, wouldn't have been in the United States. Even Du Bois, whose one line of his family had Caribbean roots, he wouldn't have existed, okay? All of that, you know, I could go on and on and on. Anybody you want to imagine, you know, whose both parents were not in the United States before, or both parents' ancestors were not in the United States before 1915, would have ceased to exist, right? The one who touches me most is our beloved Malcolm X, okay? Could we have not had him? You know, so the universe knew that he needed to come. So the reality is that this measure is defeated by a very unlikely figure in history, Booker T. Washington. And so this is why we use that entry point. But there are other examples of Pan-Africanism. I get into W.E.B. Du Bois, I get into Marcus Garvey and their contributions. But of course, on the continent of Africa, you know, Nkrumah could not have come to the United States, receive the education that he did, and then return to Ghana to lead his nation to independence, right? And also he picks up, that Pan-Africanist ideology out here in the diaspora, okay? All of them, Nnamdi Azikiwe. So there are so many connections. Our dialectical relationship, like what we're doing here, some of you are on the African continent, I'm here in the United States, and we're in a dialogue together. We've been doing that for at least 100 years or more. Okay? This is not new. We are on a continuum, right? We are in the tradition, okay? And so when we come together, most of what we need to do is strategize and share strategies and tactics for our perpetuation in the world, you know, and our safety and our security and our humanity, right? So I'm going to leave it there. So we can narrow this thing down called Pan-Africanism to specific measurable results that are still giving today. You know, I know some people, well, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to let you guys, you know, talk to me in chat, or let's chat it up if you have any questions. That's a good question, because this is such a controversial thing, right? So, you know, I'm gonna just throw out some names of what people called Africa before this word Africa, because there's a great debate about this. Some people that it's tied to Leo Africanus. I know a young, wonderful professor who's at the University of Ghana, Wesley Gone. He did the research on the word, the origins of the word. And he came up with the fact that our ancient Kemet, right, the inhabitants of ancient Kemet, present day Egypt, were the first to say Africa. And the word meant that we come from the interior. How beautiful, you know? However, there were other terms in the ancient world that we used to say a person was from the African continent. Ethiopian was one of them, right? Abyssinian was another. Okay, so we can go on and on and on. You know, I recognize that using the term African is a compromise, because what does that mean? We're so broad. There are 360 something phenotypes on the African continent, and that's not even languages and really ethnicities. That phenotype, right? Tall, short, you know. It is a compromise, right? Because we can't use a terminology that nobody knows, and then we have to stand there for an hour and explain that it means that we come from, or that we're indigenous to the most important and significant continent and landmass on the face of the earth. And I mean that, right? You know, 1.6 billion and counting. Okay. A bulk of the world's resources, sure, on the equator, but in a concentration in Africa, okay, with some of the most important resources in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries, right? Absolutely, I'm familiar with the term Akibiland, but also Akibiland has like sort of like an Arab origin. So some people reject that. I had a professor who used to tell us he was an Akibilanian patriot. And I know some people who, you know, have taken on the last name, the surname of Akibiland. That being said, you know, I'm not mad at anybody who wants to use the term. I'm just answering the question. But what I was saying about the African continent, youngest population on Earth, 1.6 billion and counting, majority are under 30, like some of you. Bulk of the world's resources concentrated in the Congo and 9 surrounding countries, fastest growing entrepreneur markets in the world. Nobody's gonna want to tell you that, okay? Africa is a powerhouse, and certainly anybody who wants to see tomorrow better get with the program, right? So we've got to, you know, so I always say, you're going to see me wear my, like, I wear this shirt out that says Africa is the future. So I said, no, Africa is now. Africa is now. Africa is the future too, right? So the shirt is getting old. I need to get a new shirt, you know, but I'm gonna wear my I Love Black People shirt too. Edmund people, can you guys send me like a summer t-shirt or something, like long sleeve? No, not summer. I have a t-shirt. I need long sleeve so I can switch up with my Africa is the future shirt. So that being said, there are a lot of terms, you know, when someone wanted to reference someone's color, they would say Nubian, right? Because Nubians were distinctively well melanated, right? So, you know, there were a lot of terms. And think about how large the African continent is. Most of the Western world can fit in there like at least 2 to 3 times. You know, they're small, but they've got the map all jacked up to give emphasis to their spaces in the world and de-emphasize Africa. So, you know, yes, there were a lot of terms. We are a broad and diverse people. So before the advent and the scourge of white supremacy and culture, we were representing our respective corners of the African continent and calling ourselves many things. But you know, there's a little controversy around the term African, right? I use it to let people know that I'm not indigenous to the Americas, don't care to be, not interested. That's another struggle, plight, whatever. I'm indigenous to the African continent, okay, period. And I know that. So, you know, but, you know, you might want to look at Dr. Cambone. He's in the University of Ghana, West Legon. And he has done a whole thing. Maybe I should share it here. He's done a whole thing on the word the etymology of the word, so to speak, African, and what it actually has meant and who used it first, right? So, but I'll share it here, so good question, right? Any other questions? This is the closest I'll get to being on time, right? Like sometimes I just go, since I'm the last one now, I used to lecture first. Now I'm the last one to lecture. And so now I can just sometimes I go off, you understand? I go off and on, right? But today I'm pretty disciplined because I know it's the first session. I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to, this is going to be painless. And actually it's probably going to feel good. So, no, we're not all Nubian. We're not all Ethiopian. We're not all Ethiopian. Abyssinian was used synonymously or simultaneously, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. Here in the Western Hemisphere, in a place called Harlem, the African people who survived slavery and defeated the institution of slavery were very aware of who they were. They knew they weren't indigenous to the Americas. And if you walk through Harlem today, you will see that they created many institutions. And like our ancestors, they wrote it in stone: African, Mother Zion, African, 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 on the buildings in stone, okay? One of the buildings that is now a church, it was a church back then, is called Abyssinian. For those of us who know, we know that is another way to say African. Yes. Does it go to a specific region in Africa? Yes, right? It is interchangeable with the word presently Ethiopian, right? Abyssinian or Abyssinia. So there are a number of different terms that people all across the African continent use to describe and name themselves, right? It's not until the advent. So yes, I totally acknowledge the use of the term African is a very contemporary term. But let me just pose this. Nobody has a problem with anybody saying Asian, even though Asians are all so different. Chinese are nothing like the Indians, okay? And they'll tell you that they're very different from Japanese or the Filipino person, okay? But nobody says you can't use Asian. But somebody got a problem with us saying African to denote the continent from which we came or are still on. Nobody disputes the word European. When you say European, you don't get a picture of somebody who looks like me in your mind. But Italians are very different from the Irish. Eastern Europeans are very different from Western Europeans. Matter of fact, Eastern Europeans were enslaved by Western Europeans, the Slavic nation. But don't nobody have a problem with Europeans saying European. Have you ever taken a plane from Europe back to the US, you know that they say right before you enter the US, if you are part of the European Alliance, fill out form A, B, or C, okay? And nobody gets scattered on the plane. They know what they're talking about. If you're coming from a European nation, all European nations aren't alike. Europeans stayed in utter chaos and war for most of their time on Earth before they come out into the Western world, into the Americas. They commit fratricide in their homeland, father against son, son against father for 1,000 years. They ain't never been unified. They only unified on one thing, that they would exploit us and the resources that we have. But nobody says, don't say European. Or nobody gets frazzled. Oh, well, all Europeans aren't alike. No, they're not. Matter of fact, they're so unalike, to be quite frank with you. That's, you know, they committed their own genocide, right? Europeans conducted an ethnic cleansing across Europe, starting in Germany. It was called the Holocaust. It was called World War II. That's what it was about. They started in Germany and decided they were going to kill every European that was of a certain faith and culture. Okay, now, so, you know, we don't have to argue about the term African. We can use the term African, and then we can be specific about our ethnicity as well. Like, hey, you want to know more? Let me tell you a little bit more about me. This is my ethnic group. This is my language. This is my context of culture. But, you know, until people start getting up in arms about folks calling themselves Asian, when Asia is so large, right? There are brown Asians, there are yellow Asians, there's some white Asians, because Europeans then did what they did there too. Nobody disputes it. Nobody got a problem with it, right? We understand that, you know, Koreans and Chinese and Japanese and Filipino people are and Indian people are different, but they're still part of Asia, and they could be considered Asians. Nobody that confused with the Asian bill here, right? When they said Asians, they didn't break out and say the various groups from the nations that they come from within Asia, right? It's called Asia continent. Okay, nobody has a problem with it. When we say Africa, the threat of us possibly seeing ourselves in many ways as a unified people is so provocative to people. It's amazing, provocative in us. And we talk about that too, because as I get to the African continent, start talking about liberation struggles, you know, there are people who deal with that very issue of us being ethnically different. Nobody's trying to pretend like we're all ethnically the same. We don't even need to be ethnically the same. We just need to be on the same page about the most important things, which is our survival and our lives. Okay? That's the most important thing. Protect our lives, period. Everything else, we can take it from there. Right? So, you know, I never hear that same commentary about European, and I've heard this from white people and Black people. You know, a white guy had the nerve to say to me, a colleague on the university said, on the university campus he had the nerve to say, oh, when I said, you know, so-and-so, he said someone was African. I said, oh, no, this person is an African. And he said, oh, she was phenotypically, she was European. And he said, oh, you have a limited view of what African means, trying to tell me that the phenotype of an African person is inclusive of the European phenotype. And I said, that is hilarious. You know, you want to include yourself in the range of possibilities of phenotype, even though we're doing fine, the range of phenotypes in the African family tree. Trust me, we don't need any more. We got 360 something plus probably. But he was trying to tell me that I had a limited view. I said, okay, so let's flip it around. When you say European, do you picture a person that looks like me? You wouldn't dare, right? You would call me an African in Europe. And the idea of being called European is beyond reproach. For me to say, because I'm physically in Europe, now I'm European, is not even a discussion, right? But everybody has such a challenge for the term African. Stop, you know, I'm not telling you guys to stop, but tell those people to stop. We're not cookie cutters. We are the human blueprint. There are no people on this earth who are more diverse than African people, the people who are indigenous to the African continent. We are responsible for the diversity in humanity. Right? The parent people. That's why it's so important. This film that I'm going to share, The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. Ignore the European phenotype talking to you and his, you know, he needs to he's got to perpetuate his own culture just a little bit. So he says some things that are incorrect, like I stated, that science is a European thing. Absolutely not. When science was created, the European wasn't even a thought. Okay, probably wasn't even a possibility. So that being said, this is why, but the film as a general work, the genetic argument, or the argument that hard science genetics makes in proving or disproving or qualifying this age-old theory that humanity began in Africa and populated the world. Okay, and that our differences in that respect as human beings come out of Africa and migrated into Europe and migrated into Asia, really into Asia, then Europe, a small branch. And he even says it himself, like he sees a tree and he says, I'm, one of those groups of people at the far end, like a branch with the little leaf, not the root, right? he was clear. He was not at the root, the base of the trunk of the tree in the human family tree, right? Europeans are way out there like a leaf that blows in the wind, right? And we all know the root of the tree does not revere or bow down to the leaf who dies and blows in the wind every season, okay? So, but I'm gonna leave it there because I could go on. Somebody else had a question and I'm like 4 minutes over, but that's better than not. I'll be posting all this stuff. Thank you very much, Roland. Okay, I saw that, right. No, we're not all Nubia. South Sudanese are Nubians. There are East Bantu, Southern Bantu, San. Yes, exactly. So we are certainly diverse. We hold the world's diversity, okay? Another way to say it is one of my elders says, we are the parent people, okay? There are no group of people on earth, on any continent, that are more diverse than people who are indigenous to the African continent, literally responsible for the world's population, okay? So nobody is disputing that, but we can use the word African. Why not? Why not? Right? And then you give your ethnic, ethnic identity or orientation after that. Okay. But nobody's getting offended by Asian or European, or Native American or anything like that. Nobody, and all Native American groups are not alike. The Navajo are not like the Choctaw or the Chippewa or the Sioux or the Iroquois. Okay, so what? But they get to say Native American, right? And nobody has a fit or clowns around with that, right? So yeah, I'm going to continue to say African. That's right. And therefore distinctively, usually, okay, ability to manifest melanin. Right. Exactly. When you rule the world with a lie, the truth becomes revolutionary. And we live in a world full of liars, people who have no relationship with the truth. All right, folks, I'm going to close it off now. And you're going to see me in the WhatsApp group. I'm going to, the first thing you're going to see, the next thing in the next couple of minutes will be the film, The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. And look at it critically. Do you get what I'm saying? We don't give no man or woman full authority over us and our story. He is attempting to prove an age-old story that we know, right? About where we originate and how we come to populate the four corners of the world. So he's just using science to qualify. But does that mean his mind is right? And what I'm talking about is the film that I'm going to post. So I'm going to post this film, and the person, him, that I'm talking about is Spencer Wells. Thank you. Spencer Wells, who is a geneticist, okay? Now he's more balanced than not. He's more balanced than most of them, but everybody want to big up their group, right? Everyone want to shout out their group. So he does that, little European guy. He's got to do that, right? Otherwise, he can't trash his own people 110%, even though in this film, it doesn't even really deal with Europeans, right? It just deals with him trying to that's the DNA, and the DNA bears the truth. Okay, so that's the first thing you'll see in your WhatsApp group, followed by all the other, this and the readings for this week. It's just one chapter. We start slowly, okay, this first time around, and then it gets more intense. Okay, all right. So it was a pleasure seeing all of you, your faces, and those of you on Facebook that I can't see. And I look forward to engaging in the context course. Okay. I am because we are. All right. Peace. All right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wright.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.